do you want to get started? Give me a yes or raise your hand. Either way, I've got a Raymond raised his hand. Robert, Luther, Timothy, Nicholas, Gary, Brandon, Zach, Juan, Todd, Jeremiah, Brent. Okay, and Margie and James typed yes. So I'm going to say that you want to get started. So first off, let me tell you that here, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be covering tonight, it's going to be stuff that I have in some of my courses, the ProPresenter Hacks, Tips, and Tricks course, the ProPresenter Troubleshooting course, and maybe we'll touch on the live streaming course. So that's some of the different things we're going to do. This is the advanced one, so if you have no idea what ProPresenter does, just pay attention to some of the stuff in the background, and I'll have a ProPresenter Basics webinar again here sometime soon. So we'll do that at a future date, as they say. So let me go back into ProPresenter. Oops. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about is layers, donkey. So ProPresenter has layers, and you might know that, but one thing that a lot of people don't get, at least initially, is what the layers do. So down here, let's see here, and canopy. So I've been messing with the transitions there. So down here, those were transitions on the song level as opposed to all songs. We'll notice that there's a black background, but that's not really a black background, that's a transparent background. And so when I click on any of these backgrounds in the video image bin, it changes immediately. And I'm just going to select the stills just to save and keep ProPresenter from chugging along, because I'm doing so many things here in the background, recording, etc. So a foreground video, yeah, I don't have any foreground still, so I'll just do that. Foregrounds replace the background, but they're technically on the same layer. A lot of people, when they first get into ProPresenter, they'll think, well, I've got a problem in that I need to add a background. So what they'll do is right-click, go into Edit Slide, and then go up here and add an image to the slide. And then I have no idea what that image is. Oh, ProPresenter 6 keyboard scan. Score, okay. So maybe they'd add that image there. That's technically not the right way to do it. Technically, you'd want to do it down here. But there are advantages to doing it there. So if you did add an image on the slides layer, every time you change slides, that will change with the slide. So it's just like text on the slide. You know, the text doesn't persist, so an image on the slide layer wouldn't persist. But what if you wanted to layer videos on top of one another? So let me show you this. So we've got this background video here. It is possible to layer a video on the slides layer, so you can have two different layers of video. And the reason that I normally think about doing this is if you have a kinetic typography kind of video or a lyric video, and you want the flexibility of changing the background on the fly. Not all churches are going to need to do this, but let me tell you when I discovered this. My church used to have a satellite campus, and for reasons that I don't get, the lighting person at the satellite campus wanted a different color of lights during a certain song that we had a lyric video for from the lighting person at the main campus. So the videographer who made the lyric video, he made the lyric video separately, and he would normally just put those two together and be done. Well, after having to re-edit this several times on Saturday night before the Sunday morning service, it occurred to me, wait, how do you export those videos? And what he was doing is he was exporting the videos as ProRes 4444 videos with alpha so that there was transparency. Then he was bringing them back in. I think he created them in After Effects and then was editing them in Premiere or Final Cut. So he was bringing them back in and putting the background together. So I discovered that I could take that same video, which is a larger video file, admittedly, but I could put it on the slides layer. So here, let me find, yep, see that? See that? That is a transparent video. And it's on the slides layer, right click, edit slide. So I have put it on the slides layer, and it's actually a larger video. So when I brought it in, it was like this, but I wanted it to be smaller, so I just brought it in and used these handles to make it smaller and put it up here. So now, you see it's still up there. It's got the transparent background, but what if I wanted that transparent background instead? I can do that. What if I wanted that background? So that's the first little tip that I discovered, was that you could use videos with transparency on the slides layer and still have the background layer play at the exact same time. So that's a cool little thing you can do. You can also, instead of putting it on the slides layer, you could put that on the props layer. So if we go to view, let's see, props, yeah, I thought it was Control P. So you can add things on the props layer up here, and have those go at the same time. So as you're running into challenges with, hey, I need this video to play while something happens underneath it, just think, what can each layer do? So the layers that you normally deal with are the background and media layer and the slides layer, but there's no reason why you can't bring in the props layer, which lives above the slides layer, and it's persistent, so it stays up as long as you want it to. So today someone was asking in one of the groups on Facebook how to add in a countdown. Now he wasn't clear on whether it was a countdown like the one built into ProPresenter or a video countdown. But since the countdown built into ProPresenter is fairly straightforward, I just assumed it was a video countdown. It was, I think, in the Church Motion Graphics group. So they make video countdowns. So I told him that, well, depending on what he wanted to do, you know, if he wanted a countdown like this one, So it's a little loud. But if he wanted a video countdown like this one, and then he wanted slides to go, he could just set that instead of as a foreground, set it as a background, and make the slides smaller and have them change, or maybe change how this background worked. But if he wanted it as above the slides, he could put it on the props layer, and that would do it. But he would not want to put it on the slides layer, because every time you go to a different slide, it would start over, or it would disappear if it wasn't on that slide. So that's another thing to remember as you're doing it. Excuse me, getting over the flu, I think. So if we go into preferences, this is something on the live streaming end of things. Under display, you'll see that there's a little checkbox called Enable Siphon. Now you check that, uncheck it, do that all you want. It won't apparently do anything. And that's because you have to have other software for the Siphon output to show up in. Siphon in the Mac version, there is software that's similar for the PC, but it's not included in the Windows version of ProPresenter just yet. And I don't know when or if they will include it, I'm just saying. Siphon enables you to send the output of one program into another program that, as long as it's Siphon aware, it sees it as like a webcam. So that gives you some power too, in that you can send the output of ProPresenter to, let's say, OBS, Open Broadcaster Software, which I think I have down here. Huh. Doesn't matter. Don't need to show that. And ProPresenter can also receive Siphon video sources. So you'll notice that it's showing Cam Twist and Cam Twist T2VUI in addition to the webcam that you're looking at me through, and the FaceTime HD webcam that's built into this computer. So Cam Twist is a piece of software that is Siphon aware, so you can take the output of ProPresenter into it, but that's not all that useful. But you can capture other things with it and send it into ProPresenter as a camera. The quality won't be as good, but that's another way you can get around some limitations. So I've seen people that needed to show a live stream, and they used Cam Twist to capture the live stream from another window and show it in ProPresenter, because they needed to go in between their regular ProPresenter feed and this live stream. A perfect example would be like the Willow Creek Global Leadership Summit. If you had that going and then you wanted to show local slides in the break without doing some stuff or running it through a video switcher. So that's one of the other tricks that I was thinking about with reference to that. Do we have any questions thus far? Any concerns? Anything where you need more clarifying? Okay, Zach, that's a great question. And it does only work on the same computer, but I have a workaround. There is a piece of software called NDI Siphon, which is free. I've got a tutorial on it. You can just do a search for NDI Siphon, and that will convert Siphon into NDI, which is Network Digital Interface. It's made by the same people that make the TriCaster. And that will send the Siphon output. It converts it into NDI, and it will send NDI over to another computer on the same network. So looks like Nicholas uses both of those. So that would be a good example of how you could do that. In fact, if a church is doing live streaming and they've got a machine that does, let's say, OBS, Open Broadcaster Software, which is a free live streaming encoder, on a different computer, but they want the output of ProPresenter as a source for them to switch over to, that's what I normally recommend if they've got a Mac, is to use Siphon, check that checkbox, then use NDI Siphon to turn it into NDI. You'll have to download a plugin for OBS, but it's free on GitHub, and then it will show up there. So that's another cool little trick that I've found. If you're on the PC version of ProPresenter, you can use NewTek, who makes NDI, has some free software that includes the NDI scan converter, which will do all of that. It'll capture the output of a specific screen and turn it into NDI. So that's another workaround for doing that. Is that clear to you, Zach? So let's see here. What else did I want to talk? Answers your question. Great. Oh, I wanted oops, I keep clicking on the wrong thing. Okay. So one thing that I've had a few people, especially in children's ministry and youth ministry, ask about is they ask about how to play games with ProPresenter. And I've got a tutorial on doing just that, but I did want to touch on it. The problem with using ProPresenter for games is that while you have nonlinear access to the slides layer, each slide doesn't stay up while you're moving on to the next slide. So if we, let's say we had this background, if instead of the slides layer I use the props layer, you'll notice how I can put multiple props up at the same time and get rid of them in any order. So what if you constructed a Family Feud board that the answers were just props? So you know, okay, answer number 2 is prop number 2. So if they guess that, you can click on prop number 2 and it goes up and it stays up. And then when they get to the other answer, you can click on another prop and it goes up and stays up. Let's say you wanted to play a game. Here, let me clear out the props here. Oops, clicked the wrong thing. Here, let me just click that. There we go. Let's say you wanted to play a game where it's, you know, boys versus girls and it's a relay race and they had to go unwrap presents. It's Christmas time as we're doing this. So they had to go up and unwrap presents, and when they unwrapped a present, they got a piece of a Bible verse. And then they had to bring it back and show it, and then that piece went up. And the first team to get all the Bible verses unwrapped wins. Well, you might get different parts of the Bible verse, so you could, again, do these at different times. I'm a little surprised. It's a little less used feature. I did have a hotkey set to each of these and see the hotkey show up, but it's not actually working. So I'm a little surprised that's the case there, but that's probably just a glitch in this particular version of ProPresenter. But you could see how you could, in a nonlinear fashion, show different props. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, vMix, Nicholas, is, from what I hear, really good. I actually reached out to them when I was writing my book on live streaming, and I said, hey, I'm only Mac. Is there a Mac version of vMix? And they said, well, what you can do is use Boot Camp or Parallels to install Windows on your Mac, and then you could run vMix. Wasn't what I was looking for, so I haven't actually used it myself, since I primarily do ProPresenter and then I also do live streaming. I just didn't have a separate Windows box. But Boxcast I have also used. Boxcast is really simple, like you say, Brandon, but they're actually doing some stuff that really, they have a really nice signal on the back end, because you plug in your video source into the Boxcaster box. I've actually, it's not a Boxcast, but this is a church streamer from churchstreaming.tv, so it's a similar thing. So the Boxcaster is translucent, but you plug in, for example, HDMI directly into it, and then plug that into power and plug your network cable in, and it does all the encoding for you. So that's a pretty cool thing as well. Yep. I don't know everyone at all the live streaming companies, but I've met several people at different ones, and all the ones that are church specific, at least, really have a heart for the church. And so I also know the people at Streaming Church in addition to church streaming. So that's, we've gone a little bit off onto a tangent, but I really think that just know that if you've got, if you're encoding with software on a computer, that's not the only way to do it. There is hardware that does it. And if you haven't bought a computer yet, the hardware may be less expensive than buying a computer and then a capture card, etc. So just weigh your options when it comes to that. I really like NDI as a solution. I like using Siphon Out from ProPresenter as a solution. So there are a lot of great ways to get a much better live stream than just holding up your phone in the back of the room, which we all know that churches don't want you to get as close as you really need to get a good picture with the phone. So you can do some zooming depending on the phone. You know, newer ones that have multiple lenses will probably give you better results than like the iPhone 7, which is what I've got. But there are plenty of solutions. And I do write an article for church production every month all about live streaming. So that's another resource for you. Okay, back to ProPresenter. Seems like we've had another 10 people or so join. If I haven't told you already, make sure that you change in the chat box, change from all panelists to all panelists and attendees so that you can all talk to one another and go from there. So let's take a look at some of the other topics that I cover. Let's see here. I think it was Command 2. Actually, let's go to troubleshooting. So the first thing I want you to know is when you get your unlock code from ProPresenter, from Renewed Vision for ProPresenter rather, I tell everyone to print off a hard copy of it, frame it, laminate it, do something, and put it somewhere close to where the computer is. Most of the time, it won't happen that you'll lose access to the unlock code. Most of the time. But if you do, you want that bad boy near where you are. And if you can't remember it, find some time during this next week before Christmas, if you've got any time before Christmas, and reach out to Renewed Vision. They'll want to know which church you're a part of. It would be better if you emailed them from the same from the same email address that you registered with, and get that ready to go, because Christmas Eve service, wouldn't you know it, I know at least one person out there is gonna have lost their unlock code, like that file glitched or something. And so it's good to have it. Another thing to know, and I would, while everything's working well for you, go into ProPresenter preferences and go into general and pay attention to the locations of some of these files. So the support file here, you see this little magnifying glass under there. I want you to click that, and that should bring it up in Finder like it did for me. And so once you double click on that, you see that in there you have all these support files. Make a shortcut to where that is, because if ProPresenter won't boot up, likely it's that one of these support files, one of these user files, has an issue, and ProPresenter can regenerate all of them, but if you don't know which one it is, then you don't know which one to deal with. So what I normally tell people is, if ProPresenter isn't starting up, or if ProPresenter just has the spinning wheel of death forever as it starts up, or it starts up and shuts right back down, I tell people to go into, this is the Mac way of doing it, so go into System Preferences, not ProPresenter Preferences, and under Users, make sure that you have another user, and then log in as that user. And if it works, then you know that it's one of your user preference files, which I showed you how to find, and then you can try and figure out which one that is. The best way I've found to do it is to find half of those files and move them into a different folder. and then try and start it up. Did it work? If it did, you know that the corrupt file was in the half of the files that you moved to a different folder. Try moving half of those back, replacing the ones that ProPresenter regenerated, and do it again. If it still works, you know it's in the half that you haven't moved back yet. If it doesn't, you know it's in the half that you did move. So you can just very quickly, because of the power of doubling, or in this case, halving, this is what I call the divide and conquer strategy. You can get down to just exactly what file it is that's the problem, delete that one forever, and so you don't lose everything. You don't lose all of your user files. You just lose that one. So that's a pretty common thing to do. I want to show you this other little thing. I'm trying to show this in all the webinars I do. You'll notice in the library here, if you click on the cog, most of you will have that checked, include song select results in search. I've noticed an uptick of questions. Why doesn't song select work on Wednesday nights, Sunday mornings, and Saturdays? So those are the three most likely times for churches to have services. When you click include song select results in search, even if you don't intend to look on song select, it's looking on song select. So there are thousands of churches going, oh, I need to add Amazing Grace. Okay, I'm going to search my library. Amazing Grace. And when you do that, if you had that selected, it's still pinging the servers even though you didn't need it to. So if we all uncheck that, except when we need it, that will help things a bit. It might not solve the problem altogether, but it will solve the problem somewhat. Let's see here. What's another problem that I see quite a lot? I think the word's gotten out, but if you update to one of the more recent versions of ProPresenter and it's only showing like a quarter of the screen in the preview window, and you're on Mac OS Mojave, make sure that you're on one of the latest iterations of that. You don't have to upgrade all the way to Catalina. I haven't even done that myself. It's on my to-do list. But once you do that, that will solve that problem. Let's see here. Sorry, I was looking up some of the questions that I've gotten on email, and someone said I'd sent out a bad link. So I've got to figure that out. Could be that we could have had an even bigger group. I'm loving the numbers that I'm seeing, though. So, Jeremiah, I believe you're here. I answered your question earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and answer it here. Yep. The output not showing up. Right now, my output isn't showing up because it's off. So I always tell people, look for the output icon in the upper right-hand corner. Is that a red or green? Now it's green. That means it's on. Now it's red. That means it's off. Or Command 1 toggles that. Yep, always check the output. I see a lot of people that for some reason it got turned off, and they'll say, oh, restart ProPresenter. Before you restart ProPresenter, if the output isn't on, I would always check to make sure that it's not on, you know, because it could be just as simple as clicking that icon or doing oops. I hit the wrong keyboard shortcut. There we go. So apparently somehow I have duplicated my screen. Huh. Let me fix that real quick. Turn that back to use a separate display. Okay, sorry about that. Still not doing exactly what I expected to do, but that's okay. So let me open up display preferences real quick and make sure that, because 2 of my 3 displays look like, yeah, they're duplicated. There we go. Oh, that does bring me to another thing. Yeah, let me bring back that. Yep, there we go. So when people say, I just upgraded ProPresenter, and it tends to always start out like that. It might not be that. And now ProPresenter can't, it's only seeing one output, and that's my control screen. It's always worth looking at system preferences or the Windows equivalent if you're on Windows to see if the problem is that the displays are mirrored, which is the Mac version, or duplicated, which is the Windows version. That's always worth doing, because if the computer can't see multiple displays or it thinks that it's duplicated, then ProPresenter has no chance. Now, I did see someone in the ProPresenter users group that I think they had either a glitch in their ProPresenter or something like that, because they had them separated, and then when they started ProPresenter, ProPresenter would duplicate them. Or ProPresenter, no, it wasn't that ProPresenter would duplicate them, it's that ProPresenter would, like, all of a sudden when ProPresenter started, it wouldn't see the second display. That would be atypical. I've seen that happen once, as I say, but that's atypical. Most of the time, it's something on the computer level, you know, something like that the monitor cable is a little loose, something like that. So always check that kind of thing first. Another thing, if we go back into our friend ProPresenter preferences, back to display, sometimes I'll see people that say that they have these on the wrong place. Always worth dragging over and then back. That's a little trick that seems to work a lot of times. relaunching ProPresenter seems to work a lot of times. Um, those are just things that I've picked up just because people seem to email me quite a lot, maybe because I've got, like nearly 1,000 videos on YouTube. So you pick up little things like that. How's everyone doing? I haven't bored you to tears yet, I hope. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll get back to those. So Juan seems to have a question. Feel free to ask that, and I'll read Austin's. In terms of generating templates for song lyrics, how can I make a double line template where the two lines are two different colored texts? That's a good question. Here is something similar I did where we've got two different fonts. Let me go into edit slide here. Let's see if we can do that with a different color. I've got to admit that part of why I like doing these is because you guys come up with questions that I would have never thought of. So, okay, so that created that. Right click, template, save selected slide as template group, two colors. I kind of think this isn't going to work, but let's go into this one. Right click, template. Where's two colors down there? Okay, and yep, it didn't work. So this is the way that I would do it instead, since that didn't work. I'm assuming that it's like men and women or two different languages. Is that the case, Austin? Because if it is, let's change the size of this. No, so more of a design aesthetic. So I don't think this will always be the way, but right now the best way around it is to have two different text boxes. And let me change the color of that one. And let's right click. Okay, and right click. Man, I've made some ugly choices just to show things in these webinars. Okay, two colors, and it's template 2. Except I foolishly didn't first add a second text box. So that wasn't going to work. Okay, now let's add that. Template, two colors, template 2. Huh. Because I had another template It was the bilingual templates, and I did that. So I wonder if that's, I've had it work before, so. So I wonder what's going on there. Something for me to investigate a little bit more. So one says, at my church, we've got 2 projectors. However, we spend hours and hours because whatever we want to display would not display. What are some ways, or where should we look to fix the issue? I saw that you went to ProPresenter preferences. I'm not sure I understand the question fully, so let me ask a couple of clarifying questions. Whatever we wanted to display would not display. What did you want to display? Is it that the output of ProPresenter wouldn't show up on both? Or is it that it showed up on one but not the other? Tell me about that. It would not display anything. Okay, step 1, can the computer see the other 2 displays? If the computer can't see it, there's no way ProPresenter can. So I would go into System Preferences on a Mac, or the settings in Windows. I'm blanking on what they're called there. And I would make sure that it could see it. So you should be able to move your mouse over there. In Windows, it's called Extended Mode. It should have wallpaper on it, probably. By default, I normally tell people to change that to the church logo or a black background, one or the other. Okay, you've got a MacBook. So do that. Make sure that that can see it. It could be a cabling issue. With HDMI, it used to be the case that HDMI.org said that HDMI was good for up to 10 meters, about 33 feet. But it turns out that they have removed that information, and most people can get a good solid signal 35 to 50 feet. But after about that length, it starts to get iffy unless you've got an amplified cable or you're doing something else. An amplified cable, by the way, tends to be directional. So you think, well, both ends of this HDMI cable look identical. I'll plug one in one place and the other in the other. If it's a longer cable, if it's longer than, say, 50 feet, then, which is around 15 meters, then make sure that it's not a directional cable as well. So those are the things. Zach is asking, as a corollary to Austin's questions, how many people have done templates for liturgy with leader and congregational parts? It's certainly the case that a lot of churches that use ProPresenter tend to be more contemporary, but that doesn't mean that they all are. So there are a good number of churches, like, United Methodist churches, for example, that do liturgy with call and response kind of thing with multiple text boxes on a single slide. So it does work. And you're right, Luther, a lot of times you do have to add an amplifier to an HDMI cable out of a Mac. So that works as well. So Jeremiah, I think you're still here. You asked earlier in an email, if my worship director wants me to do a medley of 2 songs, what's the easiest way to get both songs into one file instead of having to type one slide at a time. First off, there might be some occasions where you have to type one slide at a time, but this isn't one of them. So checking over here, let me select one. I held down Command and clicked. I'm going to just select those 4. Command click, Command click, Command click, Command click. And I'm going to select that one too. Let's say I need those 5 for a medley. Now I can Command copy, Command C, or go into Edit, Copy, and I actually did this earlier when I got the question, medley test here. Let me click on that and edit, paste. And you'll notice that they all showed up. So then I could go back to Amazing Grace, Command click to select, copy. I right-clicked and copied just to show you the other way of doing it. And then I go back into medley test and paste, right-click, paste. And it's down there. So that would be a very quick way to do it. You could also select this song and go File, Export Document as Plain Text, export that as plain text. Do that for the other song, export it as plain text, copy and paste it in a text editor, and then save that and then import it as a file, whichever you find quickest. But that's another thing to do here. Brandon suggests mitigating HDMI issues by using powered HDMI splitters and Cat6 to HDMI extenders. That will absolutely work. I'm a big fan of SDI. There's someone that just asked me about this just in the last week, and I've advised her church because they're a portable church. And I don't like Cat6 for putting it down and taking it up week in and week out, which is what they would need to do. Whereas SDI over coax cable, I think, is a little more rough and tumble. Sadly, SDI stops at 1080p. Depending, we'll talk about that a different time, because like 4K, 6K, etc. footage, most of the time at the viewing distances we're dealing with in churches, you can't tell the difference. So anyway, I did want to talk about another thing, and then we'll get back to even more questions. So, as I said, I have all these different ProPresenter courses, and I just touched on a couple of them. This was the ProPresenter Hacks, Tips, and Tricks class, where I talked about reverting to a previous builder version, triggering a countdown with scheduler, kinetic typography, lyrics without a click track, tricks for using messages in Pro6, etc. Then I've got this other class, the ProPresenter 6 troubleshooting course, where I've talked about resetting preferences, what to do when ProPresenter won't open, how to rotate sideways vertical video. That's something a lot of people run into when the output is on the wrong display, finding the mouse, I liked that one so much I made a t-shirt about it. And then the other class that I touched on was the ProPresenter live streaming course, when I talked about using bugs and logos, the alpha keyer module, the multi-screen module. One that I have never released publicly, and I finally got permission from a Renewed Vision to do this because I just, quite frankly, didn't want to make more work for them, is faking the alpha keyer module. Because there's a way to get something that the video switcher will see as alpha without using the alpha keyer module. So that's another thing that you can do, and that's in that course only. All those courses are available as part of my Church Tech U course offering, and that's a monthly or yearly price for your entire church. So that's something that's really good for getting all these courses. You can train other people in your church, volunteers, other ministries even. So if your children's ministry or your youth ministry uses ProPresenter or does live streaming or wants to know about YouTube, etc., then you can do that. And that has a private Facebook group where this is actually Becky that I've been helping with. She had a problem with HDMI running too far and sometimes blinking out. And so we were talking about switching over to SDI for her. So that is a private group that's part of that. And right now, until Christmas, which today's December 19th, which I know because it's my 46th birthday. So we're 6 days away from Christmas. I've got a special running where instead of paying the normal $49 a month, I'm running a 50% off special, so you can get that for $24.97 a month. Go all year long and save $250 for $247 a year, or for the multi-site, you save $500 a year. Thanks, Todd. And here, let me give you the short link to that in case you're interested. That's tdm.fyi/CTU Christmas. And that'll take you there. And I've also negotiated with 1230 Media. They've got an unlimited program here where if you want stuff to show with ProPresenter, so for example, here's the Easter pack. It's too late for Christmas maybe, but if you wanted to get on board with that, the Easter pack by itself is $50. And if you go directly to there, you'll notice that it's $49 a month for them. But I've got a code that you're all welcome to use. Go Christmas. If you go to their site, which is 1230.media/product/go-unlimited. Paste that into the chat. It'll take you to that website where you can see all their stuff, and they're adding new stuff every month. That could save you a bunch of time for $24.50 a month. It's really, really a steal. Just click sign up now and use the coupon code Go Christmas, and that'll save you 50%. So theoretically, instead of paying $49 a month for Church Tech U and $49 a month for 1230 Media Unlimited, you could get them both for $49 a month. So I just thought that I would offer that to all of y'all in case you found it something of value. If not, that's cool too. And if there are any more questions, I'm happy to answer those. I'm just going to take a break and drink more water because my throat's getting tired. It is possible. Jeremiah is asking, our church uses multi-screen cues, and I just noticed that just before a video, it flashes the background slide. Could I have something in layers that I'm missing? I don't usually place things in different layers. Well, quite possibly. It also might be worth going through a black slide with a clear background cue on it before you start the video. To do it, I would try both ways. It is possible that you've got a template that has a background on it that just, no, still background would be on the slides layer in a template. It would, because templates don't include the background. So I don't think that's it. It's worth looking at though. So if you want to take a video of it and send it to me, I believe we've talked before via email, so just send me a link to that and we'll take a look at it and see if we can figure it out. Anyone else have any questions? I'm happy to hang here for a few more minutes to answer them. If you do, I'm probably going to start over and do a ProPresenter Basic webinar maybe this time next week. So we'll get that going. And I've enjoyed doing this as I have the last few weeks. So I'm really excited that I got to talk to all of you. I do know some stuff that I can't talk about yet, but I think if you're at all interested in Church Tech U, I think I would, knowing what I know, I would want to get the best price sooner rather than later. And that's all I can say. But, oh, how do you add a hotkey to slides? So let's go back to ProPresenter, because there's a couple of ways that you can do it. You'll notice that I have a hotkey of in on that first slide. So I can right click and select hotkey, and let's notice it only does A through Z, so let's do Q. No reason, I just saw it on my keyboard. So now if I type Q, that should work. Yep, takes you right there, and now I can do in. Luke McElroy, who is the guy behind Salt, he sets up for every, because the hotkeys only work on the song that you're in, he sets up verse 1 is always Q, verse 2 is always W, verse 3 is always E, verse 4, you know, something like that, where it's always that, so you can at a moment's notice when you go, oh, either the Holy Spirit moved or the worship leader forgot that he'd already sung verse 1, you can go back to verse 1 just by typing that. So that's a good way to use that. So that's one way to add them. You can also right click edit slide, and I forget where it is. It's on one of these tabs though. Yep, right there. Second tab right here, hotkey. So I can change that to F. So that's another way to do it, and you'll notice that it shows up there. And if I go back and type in to get me to the previous hotkey and then F, there you go. So that is how to add hotkeys. Is there a way to highlight or keep track of the song on the arrangements bar? That would help when making changes. So, arrangements. So, I'm not sure I understand the question, Jeremiah, because I don't think I've got any good songs here that I just nuked my library not too long ago. So I've only got the one group in this song. Yeah, so you'll notice that I created a new arrangement. I think Robert's helping me out here. So I can go into Arrangement Manager and I can duplicate arrangements, or I can delete arrangements. That's helpful. It's also the case that when you add a new arrangement, you can, if you had more than the one group, here, let me add a new one. New group, let's call that verse 1, and let's add a new group here. Let's call that chorus 1. That's, of course, not the way that it is. So let's say I wanted to do that and this. So this is a new arrangement. This is the default arrangement. So that's exactly what I would do. I think that the group pills would highlight in sync with the selected slide. Oh, so wearing a longer, yeah. I see. Yeah, it doesn't do that, but that would be, if you've got a long arrangement, I could see how that would be helpful. So that would be a feature request for something new that comes down the pike. So I don't think that there's a way to do that in Pro 6. I mean, you could go into Reflow Editor a little bit, but I think arrangements is really what you want to do. So any suggestions for cleaning up the song library? Yeah, so click here, song, and go to category. And assuming that you have put in the correct category, so you could go, okay, presentations, I don't need that. I don't need that sermon, etc. And you can get rid of them that way. Right click, delete. I actually want to keep these, so I'm not going to delete it. But that's probably the first thing that I would do, is do that. Are there custom categories? Yes. New document. So when I create a new document and go to category, down at the bottom, new category. So that could be anything. Random stuff, the pastor likes. Clearly not a normal category, and there it is. Now, song 1234 or document 1234 is now in the category random stuff the pastor likes. So yes, you can make custom categories. I think by default ProPresenter only comes with a couple. So hymns, presentations, sermons, worship, those are all things that you can add. Anyone else have anything that you'd like to add? Let's see. Clean up the group categories back to stock group in preferences. So, preferences. I don't think that there is a stock group, but you can click on it and I think hit delete. Yep. So if you look through here and you're like, oh, I don't need 25 different courses, just click on it and then hit backspace or delete, depending on whether it's a Mac keyboard or a Windows keyboard. Billy asks, why would the CCLI number no show on the slide when the box is checked to show? Well, the first thing I'd check is up here. Make sure that you have the appropriate CCLI information up here. Number one. Number two, I think I would also check the template. Actually, no. If you're using the CCLI, you don't need a template, I don't think. So do make sure that that information is in there. Okay, Margie. That's like asking, which do you prefer, Coke or Pepsi? Question was, should songs be all caps? What about commas, periods, etc.? So what I tell people is, personally, I did not like all caps. From a design standpoint, it felt like yelling to me. But after my church used them for about a month, because it wasn't my decision, I quit noticing that it was all caps. And so I would say it's whatever you think looks the best. As for punctuation like commas, periods, exclamation points, I tell people to make sure that if you don't like them, removing them doesn't cause problems with understanding. There's a reason why punctuation was invented. It was invented to help with understanding. I've read biblical Greek. When Paul wrote biblical Greek, he wrote it in all caps, 5 letters, space, 5 letters, space, 5 letters. That's the way it was done. And people noticed that for example, an English example would be nowhere and now here, same letters. Only a space separates those. So they noticed things like that. So they started adding in spaces appropriately, and then they noticed mistakes in understanding. And we've all seen this with the internet, where there's all text. Text is flat. That's what my literature professors used to say in college. Text is flat, and so the punctuation helps with meaning. So by all means remove it if it doesn't affect meaning, if you like that. But yeah, we do all caps, 2 lines per slide as well, Billy. That's the way we do it. I would say after about 4 lines, it starts to get visually cluttered and it's easy to lose your place because a screen isn't the same as a piece of paper. So I like shorter, even though that makes more work for whoever's running ProPresenter. I'd rather have more work and more understanding than less work and less understanding. So, do you have or recommend a weekly, monthly maintenance plan to keep ProPresenter running as smoothly as possible? I think what I would do is at least once a quarter, go in and get rid of stuff you're never going to use again. Maybe archive it for the future if you need to go back for, you know, a yearly retrospective, or, you know, your church turns 25 or 125 or whatever. It's nice to have that archived, but you don't need it all on the ProPresenter machine. So, you know, when we get to Easter, you could probably clear out the Christmas message. Now, you're probably going to do Hark the Herald Angels Sing again, but do that. That's especially the case if your videos and images are larger than the output size. So if your projector is outputting at 720p and you've got 1080p or, heaven forbid, 4K videos or stills, then definitely clean that up because that can slow ProPresenter down. I've seen it happen. I also see that like right after summer camps and after mission trips and VBS, a lot of times someone will make a slideshow with pictures they get from a photographer who happened to be there. Might be a volunteer photographer, might be a professional, who gives you full resolution pictures. You put them in, you make your slideshow, and ProPresenter grinds to a halt because, you know, you want more resolution to print the pictures than you need to show it on the screen. So that's what I would do. At least once a quarter, go through, do that. Then it's not onerous. If it's been, you know, like 5 years since you touched it and you've got everything in there, including messages from a disgraced former pastor who left for integrity issues or something, then maybe what you want to do is start by deleting 2 or 3 every week. Just, you know, at the end of service, delete 2 or 3. Just do that and then get it down to a manageable size and go from there. That's what I'd recommend. Any other questions? Looks like we've still got a good number of people, but we're coming down to fewer than we had before. Anyone else? Okay. Well, I am going to go ahead and get off of here. My voice is getting a little tired. And I've really enjoyed it. And look out for a replay. I'm going to try and get that edited and up probably sometime tomorrow. And I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, everyone. And Joseph, you're absolutely welcome for my time. And everyone else who's saying thank you right now, you're absolutely welcome. I'm really absolutely, completely convinced that I exist because God wanted me to help you all. Seriously. And I know me, and I know I don't deserve this gift that I get to help you. So thanks. Okay, let me shut down the webinar before I burst into tears because I have been known to do that. Love you. See you. Bye.